Welcome to Field Talk, a Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. Join our host, Wallace Curry, as he explores the stories from Monitor Farm networks on how farmers have adapted their businesses with support from specialists and experts to assess farm performance and explore opportunities. Monitor Farm Scotland is farmer-led, farmer-driven, encouraging discussion and solution-based thinking.
Welcome back, everyone, to Field Talk, the Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. In this second series, if you've just came across this episode itself, we're covering sort of a lot of the, the projects that are being covered with the Monitor Farm programme. In the first episode, if you want to sort of familiarise yourself, we'll be speaking particular today about the Islay and South Ayrshire farmers. But if you want to go hear the stories from the 9 farmers in the programme, that's where the sort of first season will come in. Today, we're going to be looking at identifying profitability markers in cattle. We have a person that I used to work for the same company as, but we didn't work together all that often, and that is Lorna Shaw. Lorna, would you like to say hello?
Hi, Wallace.
How you getting on? You well?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. And we were just saying, you have the nice weather.
Yeah, it's glorious. I'll take it any day.
Laura, for those that don't know you, you sort of touched on what you do, but just give us a wee bit of background as to who Lorna Shaw is.
Yep. So I am a ruminant nutritionist, specialised in beef and sheep nutrition, working for SAC Consulting, within their livestock team, but I'm based out of the Perth office. Um, Kind of apart from nutrition, I think I eat, sleep, and breathe farms. So I am also from a beef and sheep like mixed arable unit in the Scottish Borders. So occasionally pop down there, give them some advice on nutrition and walk away, cause a bit of havoc. And yeah, that's the kind of long and short of who I am without going into too much detail. I suppose there's loads more, but we don't really need to be knowing that for today.
I'm sure that's not the case. I'm sure that's not the case. Was farming always the plan? You know, did you go to study agriculture at uni? What was the sort of trajectory?
Yeah, I think something with animals was always the plan for me. Originally, I wanted to kind of go down the veterinary route. I think would been my first thought in high school. And most of my like high school, like, you know, when you do placements and stuff in high school, they all focused around veterinary or animals. I did do a wee stint at the auction mart as well, just herding sheep. I liked being on farm. I liked being around agriculture. It was always something I was passionate about. Um, Came down to kind of grades when I was applying, and I mean, originally I did go down the kind of animal science route to try and step into veterinary because I wasn't going to go straight in. But that kind of took me more towards agriculture, and I actually swapped my uni course, which I know you were a lecturer, so you're probably like, oh, one of those again. But I swapped my course in third year to straight ag, because I figured that like the modules that I was doing best at and getting the best of me from were all to do with ag. So I think I'd find my calling at that point, and I knew pretty soon. I think I knew third year of uni that nutrition was where I wanted to go. So my final year honours thesis focused on nutrition, and then that led me into jobs within nutrition since. And since then, I've also completed a master's where I went to Harper Adams to do the ruminant nutrition masters there, and also focused heavily on nutrition again for my master's thesis. So yeah, I think since third year of uni, nutrition's definitely been the thing that's just driven me, and now I think I get too passionate about it sometimes. I love
Yeah,
I love it.
I love when people say that I get too passionate or I can talk for this for days, and I'm like, well, that helps in the podcast world. It must be said first off. Um, that Harper Ruminant Nutrition course is a brilliant course. Not that I've
It's
done it, but I'm
excellent.
aware of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's really excellent. I can't sing its praises enough. I got so much out of it. It was intense. I done it in a year. Maybe wish I'd taken two, but I typically like to throw myself into something and try and challenge myself. So I wanted to get it done in the year, and I completed it. But it was fantastic. It was really, really good.
Yeah. And I think I should say there is no judgment here, lecturer or not, if you change course. I mean, it's a pretty normal thing to do. I think it's fair to say. Um, what's your let's focus on the day job then, Lorna. What's like I don't want to say a day because that's silly, but what does a week look like in your job?
So I mean, it changes week on week, but
Mhm.
um, if we look at kind of a fairly kind of typical role, will be a mix between kind of in the office and out and about. So when we're in the office, we'll be doing quite a lot of kind of article writing, whether that's for our own internal press. We've got Sheep and Beef News and articles, well, like Unearthed. We've got quite a lot of kind of internal SAC productions that are going out. We do quite a lot of farm advisory service work as well. We've also got doing kind of industry articles for the likes of kind of industry press as well. So we'll be writing quite a lot of that. We've got project work to be getting on with, so quite a lot of report writing, quite a lot of data crunching, which I'm sure we'll talk quite a bit about today. And then the rest of the week will be out on farm or out and about with farmers. So that can be kind of one-to-one visits where we're just working with a single farmer to get down to the root of an issue, or we're doing kind of ration reviews. I do some kind of farmers that I'll regularly visit. So we just review their system and keep on top of nutrition that way. And then we also do quite a lot of kind of farmer meetings. So a lot of knowledge sharing. We do CPD courses for vets. We'll do workshops in nutrition as well. So there's quite a lot of variation, but yeah, in general, it's a lot of knowledge sharing. It's a bit of kind of learning from others as well. So I feel like I take something from all the farms I'm on and then take that in, regurgitate it out in another way, because every farm's different, every farm's got a different challenge and it's trying to get to the bottom of those individuals in every case that I do. So yeah, it varies a lot, but there's always something to take from it and learn from it, as well as share with someone else, which is really enjoyable.
I do quite like asking folk that question because the answer for your first week in November is completely different to God, your last week in
Oh yeah.
November or your first week in June, you know. Like it's
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it's great.
Come winter for us, there's a lot of rationing.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of looking at silage analysis and trying to kind of make that fit to the farm best, whereas summer is quite a lot of on-farm meetings and quite a lot of project work. So, and things will overlap and on go, but like yeah, as the year changes, as farming year changes, our job changes to match it.
And we're here on Field Talk, which is the podcast for the Monitor Farm program, Lorna. What is your involvement with the Monitor Farm program?
So I have been lucky enough to work with the Monitor Farm program since near the beginning, which has been great. I think I've worked with four of the Monitor Farms now quite closely. So I've worked with Christine's West cluster a lot, and then I've also done a wee bit of work with the Dumfriesshire Monitor Farm also. Um, so at the moment, like quite a lot of the work's been focused on, we've done a lot of ration reviews. I've done some kind of system reviews with some of the farmers. We have done nutrition workshops with all four monitor farms now. So we've done forage budgeting, but we've also done straight beef and sheep nutrition. So thinking about planning ahead and actually giving farmers the tools and resources of why planning ahead is valuable, but also how do we make that as simple as possible? Because I think with knowing what we've got in front of us, we can like be a bit more flexible with our business, but also relate to challenges quicker because we know where we're sitting, we know where our pinch point is a wee bit better. And then also what we've came to today, I've done quite a lot of work with the Islay Monitor Farm, looking at kind of identifying profitability in cattle, and also making sure we've got cattle that fit their system as closely as possible, and how we utilize data on farm better to make more informed decision making. And then we're also just about to start a project with the Ayrshire Monitor Farm where we focus on more of their profitability of their finishing system. So Islay's been very much on the suckler and how the suckler fits, with Islay being a suckler to store finishing suckler to store cattle system, whereas with the Ayrshire farm, we have quite a lot of a store to finish focus. So taking on that next stage and looking at a different stage of animal.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what those workshops involve?
So the workshops involved, I like a practical workshop. I'm quite when I do nutrition or like share knowledge, I don't like death by PowerPoint. I don't like to have everybody just sitting watching me talk because nobody takes anything from it. A workshop involves everybody having to get involved and learn and do, hopefully while taking something away from it. So um most of the time like for the we've done two. So we've done kind of forage budgeting once where we looked at silage quality quite closely. I got everyone to bring in their silages. We compared silages. We got about them, smelt them, we felt them. That rhymed without meaning to, but we basically could compare silage samples and actually like how do they differ in look and smell and touch and feel, um, to see what we could identify and guess that, and then compare that back to the analysis. So we done that. We kept that quite practical. I got everybody to do a bit of a forage budget themselves, so actually got them figuring out their own budget on farm on an individual basis rather than just me telling them how to do it. We actually made them do it. With some of the nutritional workshops we've done, um, we've been putting kind of silages into categories of what stock we should be feeding them. We've looked at mineral balance and what minerals are actually what is the function of different minerals. Like if we're looking for better fertility, what are we needing to be like supplying to make sure we've got good fertility, or what might we be missing? So I've tried to keep them as practical as possible. So get farmers doing exercises, get them making their own rations, get them doing their own feed budgets, rather than just me standing telling them this is what they should do, basically. It's
Yeah.
practical
Okay.
and chucking quite a lot of chocolate about because chocolate. So a bit of a fun fact, a megajoule that we feed ruminants in is equal to 240 calories, which is exactly the same as a 40-gram bar of dairy milk chocolate.
Is it?
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
you are.
I can also make comparisons to marathon runners, so it depends on the crowd of where we're going to go. So, but
Is that how much a megajoule is? That is not what I had in my head for a megajoule.
hmm
There you
yeah.
are.
So 1 megajoule is 240 calories.
Learn something new every day. I agree with the doing stuff to me, to put it as bluntly as you can, because it's true. You're just sitting listening to someone. You're sitting there. You're sort of trying to stay awake, so you're not taking anything in. But if you're actually doing something, it's so much more engaging. And let's take us to that position. Someone's brought their silage in. What are you looking for when they're holding that silage? What are you looking for?
So when I would look at a silage sample, the first thing I would do was smell it. So is it got quite a sweet smell, or do we get that kind of pear droppy, like butyric kind of smell from it? From that, I can tell if there's like a good amount of fermentation, or if we've maybe got a poor fermentation from that forage, and that'll impact how stable that forage is going to be in the pit or the bale. So, what heating we might have, how palatable it might be as well. We'll also pick up and feel it. So we'll grab a ball and you can give it a good squeeze. If we can squeeze quite a lot of liquid out of it, we can take quite a good guess at what sort of dry matter is available in that, or or on the other side, how much moisture is in it. So if we're squeezing quite a lot of fluid out of that silage sample, we can probably guess it'll be definitely below 25% dry matter, probably below 20. So, and if we can only squeeze a wee bit out, we're probably between 25 to 30. After that, we won't be squeezing much liquid out at all. Can also see how scratchy it is. So are we feeling a lot of scratch in our hands, or is it quite nice and soft? And that'll give us an indication of how much hard fiber's in there. The more hard fiber, the lower the energy the silage is going to be. So if that grass has went to head, and we've went past that kind of vital third leaf stage and we're starting to get to stem extension, we're losing energy, we lose digestibility or D value. So if we've got a lot of scratch, the indication we've probably got a lot more lignin and fibre that the animal can't use in that forage. And then the last thing is the colour. We can often see if a silage has went really like dark and grey, like there's quite often like a poor fermentation in there. If we've got quite a nice green kind of khaki kind of colour, that's usually quite a good indication that we've got a good quality forage. So there's quite a lot we can tell just by look and smell and touch. Um, Analysis is the gold standard, and I cannot make a proper ration without knowing what the base of that ration is going to be. Um, I feel like a broken record when I tell everyone to analyze their silage. Yeah, I still come across somebody in the room that hasn't done it. So until until I come across somebody that hasn't, everybody puts their hands up. And anyone that's listening to this is not an indication just to put your hands up to make me shut up. But I'll keep on with it, because the more accurate we are, the better performance, the higher the efficiency, and the more profitable our animals are. It's, I mean, I know it's not as simple as it sounds, but the basis is there.
Yeah, it's one of those things that there's so many cases with anything. This is the thing. Yeah, it's not as simple as it sounds, but it is. Yes, there's more work to get to that, but overall, that is as simple as it is. I know what you mean. You mentioned data a couple of times, Lorna. You mentioned that the silage analysis is the basis for all of this. We'll get to sort of profitability markers, I guess, that you're looking for in a minute. But from a silage analysis perspective, what are you wanting to see? Now that's going to differ pit versus clamp. That's going to differ where I am in Arran versus the East Coast, for example. But what are things that you're really wanting to see on that analysis?
So it really depends on what stage of production the animal I'm feeding it to is in. I'll focus on cattle today because
Yeah.
we're looking at cattle. That's what most of the like that's what my profitability like projects have all been around, is cattle performance. But if we were feeding a silage for like a spring calving dry cow, so we're just looking to keep her maintenance, we don't need as high a D value, so we could have quite a moderate D value silage. Looking kind of into the kind of mid 60s, like early to mid 60s, we could have looking for a silage that's at least kind of 9 to 9.5 megajoules of energy. I want something that is decent in protein, but it can be quite moderate for dry cows. Um, so round about 9% protein, and ideally dry matter we kind of want around 30 to 35. 25 is okay. Below that, we're getting quite wet. We end up with quite a lot of lactic acid. Um, when we get a lot of lactic, we can lose palatability. If we've just had too much, lactic's the good acid, but we can get too much of a good thing when it comes to lactic. We want to avoid a really butyric fermentation as well. So if we get high levels of VFAs, that's when we get that sweet, that kind of pear droppy smell, and that will affect palatability as well. So we want to keep them eating. These cows are dry, but they're very pregnant, and you want to keep a pregnant animal consistent. If we're going into lactation, we want something a bit higher in energy, so more than 65D definitely. You'd want more protein in there, so at least 11% protein. And then again, like a bit less fiber. So we're still looking for similar fermentation characteristics. And then for kind of growing and finishing animals, we want to be pushing it to as good as we can get. Because if we can get a really, really good forage in front of these growing and finishing animals, the least amount of concentrate we need to like use. And that will, unless you're kind of able to grow it yourself fairly cheaply, that's going to be the most expensive thing you put into that ration. So trying to get as good a forage to meet those animals' requirements as possible is important. And when we get to like growing and finishing, you're looking for a protein 14 to 16%, which we don't tend to see as often as we perhaps could. But there's a lot of factors that go in, and there's a lot of factors that are frankly as farmers out with our control as well. So, it's easy to have goals, but when we've got a year where we have absolutely no rain for 8 weeks, and then suddenly we've got loads of rain and the grass just shoots to a head, it's hard to control, and that's something we are always fighting against, is the elements. And getting, do you have a window to get fert on in time? Do you have a window to get the cutter in? have you got that window to wilt it properly, or did it end up getting rain on and we're left for 48 hours longer than we should have, and we've lost loads of nutrients in the field? It is a challenge, and that's definitely something coming from a farm myself. I can understand, but if we can if we can know the basics and aim for it as closely as possible, we're starting somewhere right.
You're talking about that sort of butyric smelling, now VFA, butyric propionic acetic acids, are where 70%, I think, roughly, of the energy comes from digestion in the rumen. So do we want VFAs that are digested by rumen bugs, but not VFAs coming in the forage itself? Or have I misunderstood that?
Yeah, so no, you will get, I mean, like there is butyric fermentation within the rumen. Um, we just it's not the most palatable of
Right.
acids, and when we are producing butyric in silage, it uses energy as a substrate. So we're losing nutrients at the same time. So that's why we're kind of trying to avoid it, is we end up with, if we get a really high butyric fermentation, if you've ever went to a pit and saw like that black, slimy, sludgy silage, it's quite often butyric. And they'll turn it away. We don't get the intakes. And so although there is butyric, they're kind of separate things
Right.
in a
Got it.
way.
Right.
That yeah, you are right. There is definitely butyric acid produced in the rumen, but we just don't. They don't want to be eating it as
Yeah.
much.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And looking at what's happening with the monitor farm side of things, Lorna, what benchmarks are being looked at here from a profitability perspective? We're looking at profitability markers in cattle. What what are those markers, I guess? What's been focused on?
Yeah. So with Isla, I'll start with Isla because when we first went into the Isla farm, they were quite good at having quite a lot of data. So we already had data for kind of we had data for like cows and their offspring, how their offspring were performing. So we had growth rate data for their offspring. Plus we had calf weight at weaning and calf cow weight at weaning as well. So we had a lot of data that was there to be used, but it wasn't necessarily being utilized as effectively as possible. But the good thing about having that data was it was there, like it was there, and we could find a way to use it to find those cows that were giving us the most money and being the most beneficial to the herd. And I think quite often when we really delve into it, the cow in the herd that is giving us the most profit is often the one that we do not see every day. So it's not often your favorite cow or the really big one that's always looking great, or and it's never, well, it's never going to be the cow that sits like a hat rack and doesn't raise a calf, but it's the one in the middle that has a calf consistently every year, holds her body condition, doesn't doesn't get like call the vet out a lot, um, and then weans a calf that does its purpose, and it'll never bother you because she's just doing her job. So I kind of wanted to use that data to try and find those cows that were just doing their job and making us the most money. And quite often that's the cow just in the middle that you don't notice every day. Because the cow that has the best calf might be like doing it off her own back, and the cow that's like looking really great every year is probably not rearing the best calf because she's putting a bit more into herself to look great. So my main thing was to start looking at that. We also sat down with the farm and had a bit of a discussion of like what what they wanted to see, like what was their ideal cow and what was their goals. So we factored that in also when we were looking at data. So there's been quite a lot. So yeah, initially the farm, like the main herd objectives when I sat down with Craig were to maintain a good level of fertility, to reduce his calving intervention, to produce a good store calf, um, and reduce the number of prolapses and have a good longevity and be good tempered. So but if you look at them, quite a lot of them link to holding her body condition well and weaning a good calf, which is back to the basics of having that cow that doesn't bother you in the system.
Do you create like a do you create various indices for this where you weight each of those benchmarks more or less on what you think is going to target towards that not perfect, that in the middle cow? Or is that just a journey across the herd to sort of work towards where that sort of target is? How are you creating that and how do you work towards it, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so I think it's been a wee bit of a journey towards the herd. What I've done with it at the moment, we've had about two kind of bows to it. So first bow, we kind of looked at the data. I had a whole year's worth of data from the 2024 kind of cow and calf crop. So we've got those, got data from those cows, and then I've got the data from the calf right through to weaning, to a 200-day weight. So with that, I've used that data to predict cow dry matter intake based on her body weight. So with that, I can see from different body weight cows how much they've been eating, because their dry matter intake will very much depend on the size of cow. So a 650 kilo cow is going to take a lot less feed to maintain compared to a 960 kilo cow. So we've looked at that, and from that I could predict how much. I had ration data already and how much the ration was costing, so I can predict how much it was costing us roughly per day to feed that cow, and then how much it was costing us to winter that cow based on her ration costs. So I've very much, to start looking into that kind of profitability factor, I've kind of looked at how much it's costing us to winter a cow based on the current ration. Somewhere outdoors, which was making it a bit harder. So they've kind of had to be looked at as a separate entity than the house cows, because obviously we're looking at very different ration indexes and costs. And then from that, I know how much, I know what weight those calves were at weaning. So I can see what that cow's reared. And that calf is that cow's profitability. The cow is there as like a producer. It produces the calf is the sale item, if we kind of break it down. So from that weaning weight, I've used weaned calf store rates to figure out a value of that calf at weaning.
Yeah.
And then I have broken it down to look at the margin of the calf value over how much it cost to keep the cow, from feed costs. So feed costs are probably one of our most, it will be the highest like variable cost we have going into the herd. So that's why I wanted to focus on feed costs. Obviously, it's not giving us a margin that's including everything else. So you've got housing, fuel, labour, vet med, to name but a few. So it's not giving us the full margin of that cow, but it does give us an indication about one of the most variable factors and how much that cow is leaving us. And yeah, from that we found some interesting data. So it definitely wasn't the biggest cow and it wasn't the smallest cow that was leaving us the more profit when we broke it down, in terms of data. So yeah, I did check back just before, and I think our most profitable cow had was about 734 kilos and weaned a 370 kilo calf that was about, and her weaning efficiency was about 50% of her body weight, which was pretty efficient. She was 2017 born, so she wasn't, yeah, she'd had a few calves before then and was still achieving quite a lot.
It's that I've got quite a data head, and for some reason one of the things you said is not working in my head. When you're talking about that comparison between the cost of producing the calf, the calf being the product, the cow being the producer, which makes a lot of sense, versus the cost of maintaining the cow. Because how are you differentiating those calculations? Because the production of the calf is a percent of the maintenance of the cow, I assume, but the maintenance of the cow includes how many calves she has in her life. How is that working?
Yeah, so I suppose I'm just basing it on on a single year
Okay.
of like, so I'm just kind of looking at that calf based on the year rather than our whole lifetime. Um, I suppose we could break it down to the whole lifetime, but it would be quite a lot of data crunching
Yeah.
to look at. So I've probably simplified it back, and I've just looked at like every cow, like every calf is a separate entity, and then she moves on to the next one, basically, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It does. It's I always do this with numbers because I like over complicate them in my head, and I should just listen to them. But um, and then is there reasons for looking at what am I trying to say here? Almost similar figures said in different ways. So choosing cost per head per day instead of um cost per kilogram of live weight gain. They're similar things, or are they telling the exact same story? Am I asking a question that's pointless there?
No, they're not really telling similar things. When looking at the project that I'm going to do with the Ayrshire Monitor Farm, looking at their finishing system, obviously the thing that pays for finishing calves is weight gain, quite simply. So in that, when you're looking at ration costs for a finishing animal, cost per head per day is only really it's only telling us one thing. It's not telling us a lot. Whereas if it was like cost per head per day, but that calf's only putting on a kilo, well, that's fine. Our cost per kilo is fairly simple. If that calf was putting on 1.6 kilos, that cost is then very different. So I think to make a ration comparable, if we were comparing a number of different rations and what their costings were, the only way to compare them fairly is to be looking at cost per kilo gained per day, because it's the kilos gained that are paying us the money when it comes to finishing. Um,
Hmm.
for a suckler, when we are when we are maintaining her over the winter so that she can have another calf, her cost to keep is probably a bit more important because we're just trying to keep her maintained. We're not trying to push weight on her. So her cost per kilo is a wee bit different compared to what the calf would be. You could break down the cost per kilo as like how much kilos her calf's putting on, but are we then overcomplicating things? And I think with data, and especially data on farm, we can get too technical and then we just lose everyone. Um, you want to keep it simple and looking at kind of where the profitability markers are, because I think all too often it's really easy to look at simple things like, the cost you've bought a store versus the cost you've sold that store finished, but forget about the middle part.
Yep.
So the cost it actually was to get that store from when you bought it to when you finished it. And the middle part's the most important bit because that's the bit that makes a difference whether we've made a profit or not. That's
And
the
uh,
bit that pays the
and
bills.
and then the economic environment agriculture is the bit we have power over.
Yeah, it's the bit we've
Yeah.
got all the power over.
Yeah.
So that's where I really wanted to focus, is that especially for finished cost per kilo gain. But when it came to that, looking at that suckler taking the calf to weaning, because after weaning, the calf's like then a finishing animal. It's into another. For the sakes of this, I've put it
Yeah.
into another realm. It's in another production system almost. You know, we've got a cost of keeping that cow, but she's got to give a product, and her calf is her product. So I've just focused on that and the cost, the margin between the cost of keeping the cow and getting that calf to weaning. We have actually made a profitability calculator with the project as well, which we can also factor in if we've like fed the calf anything pre-weaning, so any calf creep, as well as the cost to keep the cow. And we've got a bit of a ration calculator in there as well. And hopefully that'll be a bit of a useful tool from the project that farmers can use to compare their kind of margin over feed costs as well, but it could be used in a number of like situations, whether you could compare kind of sizes of animals, you could compare an autumn calving herd over a spring calving herd, and different systems like that, even kind of breed comparisons if you've got different breeds on farms. So there's a number of ways that can be useful just to see whether, is our margin good, or are we, is there ways to compare it? Because when we did look at the data, there's a really big, those cost to keep calculations ranged between the kind of, the margins ranged between about the highest one, the margin over dam keep was about 900 odd pounds, and the lowest one was about 289. So there's a big difference over that margin over calf value between animals, that in the end of the day, when you've got £289 left, but you've still got fuel, electricity, labour, everything to take out of that for that time, unfortunately, it's maybe not leaving us a lot at the end of the day. But if you've, after feed, got over £900 to play with, you've got a lot more room for profitability.
Over £500 of a difference is quite crazy.
It's massive.
Yeah, that's Lorna, someone might be listening to this and thinking, either I have data or I don't have data and I want to look at this, or I don't not silage sample, sorry. I just filmed a podcast on soil sampling about 4 hours ago, apologies. First off, what would you be saying if they were going to start looking into this? What would your advice be? And it'd be quite interesting to hear yourself, who have been crunching this data for years now, probably. Is there any almost underutilized data, or like a piece of data that we don't use enough that you see being very useful in the work you're doing?
I think in terms of data that's useful to us, I think the simple ones, like knowing your weight of your cow for a start, because that really helps us to know how much that cow's eating, how much it's costing us to keep her. Knowing weaning weights of calves is vital, because then we can marry up how efficient that cow's been in the time, and how well she's worked off the system. And it's trying to find a cow that fits your system. And I mean, like, the system on your farm, Wallace, compared to the farm I've grown up on, are very, likely very, very different. I know for a fact we've came from very different parts of the country. So
Yep.
we've got that for a start. So there's not always one size fits all, but if you know your cow weight, you know what she's weaned, we've got a good start to figure out how efficient she's been. Cow efficiency we have to watch, because unless we take account of birth weight, we can start favouring animals born later in the season. So it needs to be calculated very carefully to make sure it's accurate. So I wouldn't, if cow efficiency's been calculated properly, it is a valuable tool. If it's not been calculated properly, we're gonna lead ourselves up a garden path we need to be careful of. I think that's definitely a lesson I've learned during all of this. We need to be taking account of calf birth weight. So that's probably another one that's quite important to know. Obviously, quite hard to sit a calf on a weigh scale every time we're birthing it, but there is quite useful tools. Like, quite a lot of the breed societies will use like weigh tapes and stuff that are proven to be fairly accurate. So it is worth, if possible, getting a bit of a gauge over how big your calves are. I think another one, if you can get your your weight gains for your calves, you can tell the ones that are performing off the system that you're on best. Because if you're on a grass only based system, your calves that are consistently managing at grass with no creep. I mean, when we're looking at data, there was calves up to weaning, there was no creep fed at all to calves, and there was a steer that gained 1.6 kilos, and versus the lowest one that was 0.7 kilos. There's a big difference in weight in those animals, and they're all on the same system. They're all, being fed by mother with just grass in front of them. So that's given us a good gauge over what's working with the system. I think my last vital one for cows to be looking at, and should never ever be forgotten, is body condition, and not just by eye. Get your hands on a cow. We could look at 200 to 700 kilo cows, I know not all cows are 700 kilos, but you can look at two 700 kilo cows. One might be 4.5 and fat as a whale. Another one might be 2 and lean as a rake. They're the same weight. So weight's only telling us one thing, but how she's holding her body condition will tell us a completely other story. Um, and the cow that is doing best will just maintain her body condition no matter what challenge you put against her. So they're probably my key ones. For finishing animals, you want to know your weight gains fairly regularly, not too regularly. If we've done it every 2 weeks, we start to see funny data coming in. Monthly, quite consistently is always good. Because then we can see if the ration's performing, if the cow's performing. We can pick up if we're regular weighing, if there's any health challenges and stuff like that. That would allow us to be a bit more proactive in our decision making. And I think that is probably one of the most important things is what data offers us for suckler cattle and for finishing cattle is the ability to be proactive because we can pick up things quicker. If we don't have data, we don't know that animal is sick or underperforming until they're really, really underperforming and it's noticeable. Whereas if we've got some data, if we're body condition scoring or if we're weighing cattle regularly, we can spot when things start to slide or things have changed quickly. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
probably a
think
bit of
that's right. I
summary.
mean, there's I would say opinions from some people that data and genetics and tech and AI and whatever that progressive thing is taking away that stock person's ability, whereas it's not that, it's that enhancement of that is the way I see the use of data anyway. It's not a instead of as and as well as.
Yeah,
Um,
I would agree. I mean, data's never going to replace a brilliant stocksman. And I mean, growing up in agriculture, like I've grown to admire. There's those stocksmen. I've definitely got a list that I just look up to and will always look up to because they're just brilliant at what they do. And and that's never ever going to be replaced. That skill of knowing an animal and picking up on things is never going to be replaced by data, but it allows us to be better at it, which yeah, I'd agree with you. It's not one or the other. It's both, which probably leaves us in the strongest position.
Now, with regards to profitability in the sector we work in, we've already alluded to sort of the economic structure of agriculture. With you're not looking at adding value, yes, you have a wee bit of power over the price that you sell at, given the animal you're producing, but the real opportunity for maximizing profitability is costs and minimizing that. Is there any hidden costs to what we're talking about today here, Lorna? I mean, there's the obvious, there's the scales, there's the feed input, there's, I assume you don't come free, the knowledge you have, there's all of that. But is there any hidden ones that you're maybe noticing that you're like, oh, I never actually fully considered that, or maybe some of the people involved had never considered it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there is definitely a lot of hidden costs there in terms of like costs of like when you've got like health challenges and stuff like that, when you've got loss of production and the co like are we always accounting for the costs lost instead of the cost
Hmm.
spent? Because they are still costs to the system. Even just little ones like if you've got kind of slight mineral imbalances, is that holding back cattle from reaching their full potential genetic gain on the ration they're on? So, there's things that might hold things back. But yeah, in general, I mean what I've looked at has definitely been quite focused on feed costs, which are one of the biggest factors, but there is so many other factors in terms of profitability. And one of the reasons we never went into all of them is that it's quite complicated to split those costs out between enterprises and without doing a full enterprise costing, which I suppose maybe wasn't the full intention of what we were trying to achieve. Because yeah, although it's definitely recommended, it's it's not something that's always easy to do and not a quick check. So we were wanting to kind of look at profitability more in a quick check. But yeah, there will be hidden costs, like especially with finishing. If you get an ammonia breakdown and things like that, the hidden costs to that and loss of performance should be accounted for.
How long does it take to build up a strong picture here? Let's give two examples. Someone who's maybe really not got data and you're getting involved at that point, Lorna, and you're sort of having to build that data up. And then someone who, for the most part, let's take Craig as an example, who already has quite a strong data set, maybe just not turned them into insights yet, if you will. How long does that take to build that picture up?
So I mean, you can start getting a picture of just kind of single cow and calf performance within about a year. So you would need that whole year's data though to see, where's that cow sitting and how was her calf, how was it weaned, and then how did it go on to perform, really. Um, if you want kind of a bit better picture overall, like looking at kind of overall calving interval, and that's definitely something with the fertility focus in the herd that we have looked at. And I suppose I didn't really mention that we also did go through all of his heifer calves for this year and tried to find, we were looking at calving interval to make sure the dam's calving interval was good. We wanted like a calf that was going to reach its weight for bulling in time. We needed a calf that was going to hold our body conditions. So I didn't pick calves from dams that were too fat or too thin. Um, so we looked at a heifer calf, not just it's easy to select on just weight, and a lot of heifers are selected on weight, but I looked a bit further into dam performance of that heifer and allowed that. So I actually gave poor Craig and Thomas a list of heifers I liked and heifers I categorically didn't, and let them pick from that.
How
Um,
how how in line were you're categorically didn't and they're categorically didn't?
they only picked a couple that I didn't that I did put a maybe pile to them to be nice.
Mhm.
So they swapped a couple from my good to my maybes just based on cow temperament and things like that. Because obviously when you're looking at data, you don't get an on-farm picture of oh that cow was nuts at calving or like, there's something else that's happened. Maybe there was a health challenge on the cow that meant you didn't want to keep her daughter or things like that. So you don't get that picture all the time with the data set. So there was a couple we swapped, but in general, I think they were fairly happy with my list. I didn't chuck away. There was one argument over a twin, but
Yeah.
I don't disagree with what they were arguing. So
I think if you're at the stage of the argument only
anytime.
begins with a twin, then that's understandable. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it was fair. Um, yeah, I was questioning whether, twins do come with challenges. They've got higher feed requirements. It is harder on the cow. You've got more potential challenges at calving and a potential an increased mortality rate with twins, just with the nature of the beast, really. So I was debating, do we want to keep heifer calves that were obviously heifer twins? Even though they did perform very well, and the cow's done very, very well, because there is a potential, and I'm not saying a fully chance, but there is a potential chance that they will then go on to have twins themselves, and we're then breeding for that. So, it's not always a rhyme or reason. There's like, but there is probably higher chance that they may.
Try and summarize with a focus on the Monitor Farm program itself. What have the sort of key learnings been? If you had recommendations for the other five farms, I know they don't all have beef cattle, but if you had recommendations for beef farms, what would they be? With a focus on profitability markers, sorry.
Yeah, so I think main recommendations for kind of other kind of herds looking at profitability markers is to, one, know what your on-farm goals are. You want to know what end product you want to produce and be choosing your cattle to be profitable and successful at doing that. Two, choose the data that's going to give you the biggest value from that. So if you're looking to produce a finished animal, choose those animals that are successful at doing so. If you're looking at producing breeding animals, again, you might want to pick slightly different animals, but you want to be picking those animals that are good at doing that, is producing a heifer or producing a bull calf if you're producing bulls. 3, know your costs, know your ration, so analyze your silage. If we don't know our quality of our silage, we can't accurately ration, and we don't know how much our ration's costing us. So it's pretty simple. Would be my third one, is know what your basic ration costs are. And my last one is, although I've probably overcomplicated it in the way I'm talking about, try not to overcomplicate it, because your littlest wins are probably going to give you your biggest gains in the end of the day. And all we really want to do is just identify those cows that are being successful in the herd and try, if possible, to breed a herd of more of them. Because there's not really much room for passengers in the industry. And it's those passengers, it's those hidden passengers we want to be trying to weed out.
Hmm.
Is probably a key message.
Did you have them written down? Because you just did 4 of that. I was like, that was pretty impressive. I didn't expect a named 4 objectives. That was quite
No,
good.
I didn't have them written down either.
I was very impressed then, very impressed. I would have still been impressed had you had them written down. But one thing to probably ask before we sort of draw the episode to a close, Lorna, is we're speaking cattle here. It's almost probably easier in our head to look at cattle because of numbers from a data perspective. But in general, I assume it should be scalable to sheep, just more animals. I assume this is still doable in a sheep system, or is it slightly different?
No, I think it should still be doable for a sheep system. I think with a sheep system, I would be going through the data quite differently, just because when you're looking at a sheep system, like compared to a cattle, quite often cattle herds, you're looking at 100 to 200 animals, and it's a bit easier to go through their data than going through 500 to 1,000 sheep. So you probably want to generalize sheep data a little bit more, so maybe move it towards a bit more averages rather than looking at every single animal on an individual basis all the time. Although there is definitely merit, especially when picking kind of your replacements, of looking at dam on a bit more individual basis. But yeah, have a good filtering system for sheep. Might make it simple. But yeah, there's no reason why we couldn't look at, lamb output from a ewe and her percentage efficiency of weaning, which is still a really important figure to be focusing on, that we would look at, and figure out, in terms of what it's costing us to keep that sheep, how efficient she is and how much margin she's leaving us. Because yeah, again, I think yeah, there is definitely a pattern of and we're all proud of it. I'm with it as well, of when you sell an animal for a lot of money and you're like, oh, I made this much per kilo today and it was great. There's that sense of pride. But if it's cost you a lot to put those kilos in, it's not, in the end of the day, we are running businesses,
Yeah.
and we have to be understanding of that. So yeah.
On what you just said, Lorna, for those listening, if you want to sort of listen to an episode, I can't remember what number it is, but in this series, there's an episode on maximizing sustainable output with Chris Clark and Angus Walton. And that looks at what you've just said. Yeah, it's really exciting to sell for whatever. But what was that input cost as well? And that's pretty much what that whole episode's about. And I think it's been out about 4 weeks at the time this is released, so that should give you a bit of idea as to how to find it. To finish off though, Lorna, thank you for coming on first off.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. But if people are listening to this and maybe want to read into it a wee bit more, maybe have a look more, can you signpost folk in the way of any resources or or where they could find support, feel free to plug yourselves, obviously.
Yeah, so no, obviously I work for SAC Consulting, so we've got quite a lot of resources via our FAS website. We've also got resources for the project coming up that will be released onto the Monitor Farm website. So keep an eye out for those. And the profitability calculator is in the process of just being finalised. So that'll actually be released with the Islay Monitor Farm in September for our final wrap-up meeting. So that will be in circulation from then onwards as well. So yeah, there's quite a lot of resources incoming in terms of the projects we've been doing, and they'll also be coming into this next year for the Ayrshire project, which involves myself and our beef specialist Gavin Hill, which I know will be a familiar name to many. There'll be meetings and resources coming up from that project as well. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for the Monitor Farm websites. There'll be lots incoming, and yeah, if there is anything, please don't hesitate to give me a shout. I'm more than happy to help.
Excellent. I do remember Gavin's weekly email updates at work back in the day.
He's a font of all knowledge when it comes to cattle.
Yes, yeah, quite intense. I think you've got to be considered that as well yourself, Lorna, to be fair. But thank you for coming on. As I said, been a pleasure. Appreciate your time. So thank you for that. And for those of you listening, that's been Lorna Shaw looking at profitability markers in cattle. As I said, I mean, I don't know sort of how much scope there is for this series wise, but there's probably more in depth to go with that, to be fair, Lorna. I think there's probably a lot more to cover, but we do have somewhat of a time we've got to stick to. And as Lorna said, any questions, feel free to get in touch. If you haven't got Lorna's details, get in touch with us, and I'm sure we can pop you in touch yourself. And then if you want to go and listen to another episode of Field Talk, the last episode we had was with ex-Grassland Farmers Weekly Grassland Farmer of the Year, John Ritchie, talking grassland management, but also again with a focus on what's happening with the Monitor Farm programme itself. As ever, thank you very much for listening, and we shall see you in the next one. See you then.
Thanks for tuning in to the Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. Don't forget to click subscribe wherever you get your podcast from for more episodes as we continue to dive into the stories from our Monitor farms. If you want to stay updated with our latest news and events, please visit the Monitor Farm Scotland website and follow us on social media for more updates and keep in the know about what our farms are getting up to. Monitor Farm Scotland is funded by Scottish Government and managed by Quality Meat Scotland and AHDB.